personalization is closing that gap between some and potential. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Talks, the podcast that brings you real strategies for sustainable fitness transformation. As part of our sustainable fitness transformation, I guess a promise or values, as we will say, a lot of people often ask us what makes things sustainable, or what about your coaching program is actually different, and like what's different about it compared to maybe some of the other options out there. And you and I, Paris, both often gravitate towards the language of personalization.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do is highly personalized and built for like the individual we're working with. That's a core part of our values and our coaching philosophy. I don't think it's always known to people, though, how valuable the personalization is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like what the true value behind that is and why it's important to us and why we coach with personalization in mind every step of the way. So that's what today's going to be all about. We're just going to clarify essentially what is the real value of personalization when it comes to your fitness journey, and why is it important for you to prioritize for yourself as well.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of coaches will see like, oh, personalized like nutrition plan or whatever. And it's like not, it's like totally not. And so when we say personalization, like we legitimately, you know, mean it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not I put your personal height and weight into a calorie calculator.
Oh,
There it's
damn. Yeah.
personalized, right? I think there are a lot of
Yeah.
coaches who
Yeah.
do that. They're like, no,
Yeah.
but your
And then spit
macros
out a
are
random meal plan.
personalized
Yeah. Yeah.
because they have your
So
height and
dumb.
weight. But what about someone else at my height and weight? You're giving them the same plan and strategies as me,
Yeah.
right? So
Freaking ridiculous. Yeah. Anyways, and we've heard reason why we feel so strongly about this is because we've inherited a lot of clients who were just given the same plan as all the other men in the program and all the other women in the program. Multiple times this has happened where we've had clients that have happened, or we just hear these horror stories like I've heard, especially in competition preps, like where all like literally all the clients have the exact same plan, and like for some person it's way too little food or too much food, or and it's just like what. And it just makes absolutely no sense, right? So that's why we have such a strong perspective on this, and why we believe like personalization really is the key to success. And it's not just personalization in terms of training or nutrition, it's personalization in terms of what matters for your goals, and then what makes sense based on your lifestyle,
and your
right?
preferences, which are a part of
And
your
your
lifestyle.
preferences. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
taking all of that and looking
Mhm.
at the person really holistically, versus just, this is your height and weight and gender, and let's just give you whatever.
Absolutely. And I think today what we're going to do is we're going to dive in like to all of the ways that personalization matters and how it shows up in your fitness journey. We'll also give as we always do, the other side of like maybe where it matters less or where it's a little bit
Yes,
less
totally.
important. So we'll talk about that too, because we're not here to be like everything has to be hyper personalized, and there's different stages and different phases and stuff. So we'll get into that. But I really want to talk first about like what do we mean when we say personalization? Because you just talked about it through the lens of like goals, lifestyle, preferences are kind of like the three things that we're talking about when we're
Hmm.
speaking about personalization. But what does that mean to you, and how does that kind of come to life in practice?
Yeah. So first, you need to kind of look at the person of like what is their lifestyle like as a whole. Okay, how many hours are they working? What kind of job are they working, or are they working, or are they student, or are they caretaker, or at home taking care of the house, or just retired? Like whatever, you have to kind of look at that first, and then see what kind of even their leisure looks like apart from their, we'll say, life responsibilities or work responsibilities, and what they like to do, and like how demanding both of those things are in their life. And then from there, you have a good idea of, okay, how many times a week can we train? How long can those sessions be? Like those kind of things. And then, from there, then you need to start looking more directly at goals. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And you need to start to think about, okay, like now amidst these kind of quote unquote constraints that we have lifestyle wise, now how do we craft things around the goals that they're looking to
Hmm.
chase?
Yeah. I'm going to
And
actually
what,
replace the
yeah.
word constraints with parameters, because I know
Yeah,
what you mean. It's
nice. Yeah,
yeah. I'm going to
that's
say
what I said, quote unquote
parameters. Yeah.
restraints. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, parameters, and then when you're thinking about that, the next layer that you got to even add into that is what Courtney said: preference, and also what how developed you are in your fitness journey.
Oh, yes.
So
Experience
tag
level
that,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
experience level. So it's like there's so many different things floating around that we all have to take into account when we're then crafting this
Hmm.
personalized plan. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes what people do when they think it's personalized is they're just looking, as we said, at the gender, height, and weight, and they're not even thinking about all those other things. When in reality, those things have a massive, massive effect
Yeah.
on what the plan should be.
Absolutely. So let's make this tangible, okay? I'm gonna use myself as an example, but this is kind of the thought process I think we'd bring. Like if somebody shows up and is like, "Okay, let's work together," to understand the level of personalization through all those things you just said. So let's use me as an example, and then we can do you too if we want. Lifestyle. Okay. So I am an entrepreneur who works from home. I live with my partner. I have a dog. I play volleyball once a week. In the winters, I snowboard. And what else do you know about me? I don't know. That's the main things, right?
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. For right now. Yeah. The
For
season.
right now,
Yeah.
yeah. So for the season of life, that's what you need to know about me. Okay, so that gives you a sense of like maybe a little bit about my weekly routines or things like that. Oh, I live in Vancouver. Cool. That might be something we consider as well because Vancouver's a walkable city, or I don't know, gives me proximity to the mountains for hiking. Whatever it is, there's stuff about me and my life that is those first parameters. So the second thing is like the goals, right? And those goals for me are like, okay, I have physique development goals, right? And if I want to get more specific than that, everyone who's been listening to this podcast knows for a while I've been working on my quads. Okay. So like I have quad development goals, right? I have those goals, but I also have goals outside of fitness too that may or may not be relevant for a coach to understand. And then we start talking about preferences. Okay, I love food. I love flexibility with food. My preferences are to, I have, I don't know, more of a salty tooth than a salty tooth. I don't know if that,
Hmm.
I like savory more than sweet, like
Yeah.
those sorts of things. And my preference is to train flexibly rather than train the same days every single week. I like to mix up my schedule. Those are all preferences of mine that relate to my lifestyle and relate to my experience level, right? Experience level is the other thing. Said I've been lifting for 13 years. How does that play a role? I've been, like doing all these things for a long time. I've got experience tracking my food. Now I'm just
Hmm.
rambling about myself, but the point
Hmm.
is, look at how much like, and I'm
Context
stopping
matters.
short. All of
Yeah.
these things that get taken into account.
Hmm. Totally. Totally. And the thing is also, these things change over time. Okay. And that's why we not only need to look at all these different variables within the context of the person, but we also need to think that your lifestyle does change over time. Like you, when you were working in your corporate job, like that looks different than now, and maybe
Yeah.
what you can do has changed.
Hmm.
And or you might have a period of time where maybe you have even more time later on, and now it frees up some things. Or maybe it's volleyball season and you're playing twice or three times a week now because you
Right.
love volleyball. So it's just things change, and
Hmm.
adaptability is part of the personalization. I'll say that again.
Yeah.
Adaptability is part of the personalization because we also have a lot of clients who like will say have micro seasons of traveling or something like that, whether for leisure or for work. And part of the personalization is adapting the plan for that unique circumstance. And then we
Hmm.
need information about, okay, in that context, what does the day look like? When are the meetings? If it's a
Right.
work trip, right? What's a sleep schedule like? Is there drinking involved? Is there food involved? Who's going? Like, what kind of
Your
company do you work for?
routines
You,
change.
yeah, you need to know all these things. So that's
Hmm.
when it really comes down to having a coach who has experienced eye and knows how to kind of manipulate all these variables depending on what's going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, it doesn't even have to be as big as like taking yourself out of your home and traveling and things like that. Like
Hmm.
I'm thinking about you now, right?
Hmm.
And you just went through a major life change that did
Yeah.
shift
A
your
few. Yeah.
daily routines. You want to talk about that quickly just as proof point?
Yeah, well, I pretty much got engaged, married, moved, found tenants for my place, and moved in with my partner in the city, all within the span of like what,
Yeah.
2 months or something
Yeah, so
crazy.
that changes where you're situated. You moved into the city,
Mhm.
changes who you live with, right? And that has a downstream effect in terms of how your day to day is organized. So, like,
Totally.
that's another key thing about the personalization is like, okay, it's to your point, it's the adaptability. It's like, okay, well, how did you still do things for Paris today versus Paris a year ago?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that.
exactly.
So when it comes down to personalization, quick summary, we're talking about understanding not just because you'll notice, even when I did my summary myself, I didn't talk about the fact that I'm a 31-year-old female, right? Like
Mhm.
I didn't talk about my body weight. I didn't talk about my height. So yes, those like bodily metrics do matter when we're talking about the specifics of things, but when we're talking about strategies, kind of less so, right? So it really is personalization through the lens of lifestyle, preferences, goals, experience. Right?
Yeah,
Does that sum it
totally.
up? That's our definition of personalization. And
Yeah.
then wrapped in all that is how do we adapt as things within those four criteria change and evolve?
Yes, totally. Totally. Yeah.
Oh,
Love
I
it.
like where we're going with this.
Frameworks. Yeah.
Yeah. You know me, my strategy brain is like, give me a framework. That's just how I
Yeah,
operate.
yeah.
Okay, so we talked about what it is, but why do you need personalization? If I have a plan that doesn't do all the background of my life and blah, 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 could it still work for me? Maybe. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's actually talk about
Mhm.
the value of personalization for fitness.
Yeah, I think the value of personalization is that adaptability, concept that we talked about because things inevitably will change and all those variables are in constant flux.
Hmm.
And what happens is people, when those things do get in flux, they tend to lack consistency as a number one thing because they can't like the plan does no longer working for them based on all those things that we talked about, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore the consistency kind of falls off the map. Or the other thing is, if you're following something that's generic, you're probably leaving a lot of progress on the table because there's little tweaks that
Mm,
you could be making that would amplify things.
yeah. I
Um,
can
yeah,
can I actually break those into two
yeah,
and
yeah.
like dive
Go
into
for it.
them for a second? Because I think they both have a ton of merit. The first one is like the consistency issue, right? And you tied it into adaptability in a really beautiful way that explains why some people drop off when they don't have personalization, but some people never even get consistent because they don't have personalization,
Oh,
right?
true. Yeah, very well
So, for
said. Yeah.
example, like I was speaking to someone last week who's like, okay, so like I had a, previous fitness program I was a part of. And what they did is they gave me workouts that used equipment that I don't have access to. And they gave me a bunch of recipes with foods I don't like. So,
Perfect.
right. So, what happened?
What
That
is going
person
on in
didn't
this
follow
industry?
that program, right? So, not
I
only
hate
did
I hate this industry as much as I love it. I gotta say, I'm sorry. I really do hate it sometimes. Seriously.
it's crazy.
Sorry.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's honestly, I feel yeah, I'm with you. And I'm I could rant about this industry and
Hmm.
maybe we'll do a whole episode on our fitness
Yeah.
industry icks. Maybe that's
Yeah.
coming up
Yeah.
soon.
That's a good
I
one.
think they're peppered in, but we'll do a one big rant session on that.
Hmm.
Stay tuned for that episode. But I think, hearing her talk about that, I was like, okay, so not only did things not adapt, because we've had other clients say, oh, like my coach didn't change my program for the entire year. And I was like, what? They didn't adapt anything? So the adaptability is a barrier to consistency, but sometimes the lack of personalization to begin with makes it hard. And I can go on and
Hmm.
on about this, but those two examples were both accessibility, like they didn't
Hmm.
take into account her accessibility of equipment, but also a lot of preference. But
Hmm.
there's also some people that maybe it could just be okay, they get a plan that's like 5 days a week, but they can't commit to that because their work is so
Hmm.
challenging right now and so hectic. Maybe they can only commit to three. Then what do you do? Do you feel that it
Yeah,
becomes pass fail? And then there's no consistency
totally.
because you're not able to do that plan over and over again.
Totally. Like, why would we be giving maybe, let's say, a male student in his 20s who, doesn't have any other work commitments outside of it and they're just going to class and coming home and they've been training for maybe, I don't know, 7 years? Why would we give them the same plan as a guy who works, I don't know, finance downtown Toronto, for example? He's at the office from like 8 a.m. to like 6 p.m. every day. He has two kids and, his weekends are driving to take his kids to hockey or soccer or something like that, like, and he just started training. Like,
Right.
why would we give them both the same plan? And that's what we're seeing, happen. And it just makes no sense. And even if like you could theoretically make progress with that plan, it's like, as Courtney was saying, you're not going to be consistent. So who the
Yeah.
hell cares what's on paper? It matters what we actually do.
Yeah, and if it's not doable for your life parameters, you're not going to be able to be consistent with it because you can't be consistent with something you can't do, right? So it has to be achievable. And I'm not saying, oh, like let's just bring everything to the like lowest possible state of existence and make it easy. No, but like
No. Yeah.
sure, to a certain point it takes effort and a little bit of
Mhm.
accepting some
Yeah, of
challenges.
course.
That's reality too. But it doesn't need to be harder than necessary and it doesn't need to be
Hmm.
out of reach entirely, right?
Totally. Yeah.
You also started going into the cost of generic a little bit there,
Hmm.
right? So let's talk about that because that was the second point you brought up is personality. Personality. Yeah, personality is important. Personalization is important because it's not just what it offers us and the ability to do things consistently and everything, but also because when we lack it, there is a cost of doing something generic, right?
Totally. Yeah. I think, like, for example, let's say I give everybody the same set of macros or protein calories or whatever. For some people, it might be perfect, but there's a bell curve with people and how they
Mm,
respond. So let's say everybody was trying to, lose body fat and get lean. Okay. everybody following the same plan. Some people might see results. Some people might see too slow results. Some people, it might be way too aggressive of a deficit for them. Some people will be at maintenance, and some people might even be in a surplus.
Hmm.
So it's like that just goes to show why personalization matters. And then, maybe even if you started them with the same thing, like you're going to notice because of the data quickly and the response or lack of response that you're going to then change things. And that's where
Hmm.
personalization comes in. Same thing with training. Let's say Courtney's quads were the opposite. Let's say Courtney's quads just she would like squat down once and they just exploded in muscle, right? Why would I give her the same like leg specialization, which just means a focus on legs that I would give to somebody else who maybe has chopsticks that never grow no matter what? Like, what would be like? So it's like, why would we not individualize things? There's no way we're not going to be leaving progress on
Hmm.
the table. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So the cost of generic is actually kind of both the consistency thing that we spoke to, and also just the leaving progress on the table. That's like the biggest thing. Like, if you personalize something, then what you're doing is setting up all of your variables, whether that's training or nutrition, because you talked about both those things. You're setting up all your variables for your personal success, right? You're maximizing that because I don't know. I don't care if somebody else did what, not to be rude. I care about other people. I'm empathetic. But if a program works super well for someone else and they're thriving and they're setting PRs, growing muscle they want, and feeling well fueled along the way, cool. If it doesn't work for
Hmm.
me, I don't care. I'm selfish
Hmm.
enough about my fitness goals that they're my fitness goals. And so, like, if I want to get this specific tangible outcome, whether that's my quads growing or wearing my sports bra comfortably on the beach for beach volleyball, otherwise I'd be in a bikini on the beach, hopefully, then that's my goals. I need the thing that gets me that outcome. So if that's affected by my daily movement, my genetic response to training, my preferences, all of those things,
Your
I
starting
got,
point. Yeah.
yeah, my starting point, my experience level, all of that. It really, I need those things to be taken into account because I don't want to leave any progress on the table.
Totally. Especially now that you're further into your fitness journey, it matters even more. And what I
Hmm.
find is, and I know we're going to get into maybe when it matters less in a second, but when it matters most is when you are super far into your fitness journey, like the level of, I'll say, specificity with clients that have already been training for years that I integrate is a lot more than when they're beginners, right? Because we've
Hmm.
already learned their body, we see how it responds. Usually, we're getting hyper focused on which muscle groups we're trying to develop or
Hmm.
stuff like that, right? So it's like if I just kept giving them a generic plan, they would just kind of look the same forever, right? Like
Right.
the progress would greatly be limited, like even more so when you are more advanced in your
Hmm.
training.
Absolutely. And as you get more advanced in your training, you also become more aware of what kind of specificity you need, you know?
Yes.
Like, I think because your experience trains you more on your preferences and your body's response to training,
Hmm.
right? So if I think about myself, it's like I can actually now go to my coach and give him more specific feedback so he can program more specifically because I have a different level of
Yes.
awareness. And because I've got the time on my side to say, okay, if we've trained this way for X amount of time and we've seen this outcome, what does that mean for what we need to do next? So I
Hmm.
think that ties back into the wonderful like adaptability concept that you brought up
Hmm.
front is like the more advanced you get, not only do you need to get more specific because you maybe tapped out on like those newbie gains or like that initial momentum, but also you can get more specific because you have given yourself the privilege of getting more
Yes.
specific
Yeah.
by being able to talk about your past experience and what worked and what didn't.
And you have tons of data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Data, I love data. Data is everything. Yeah, so it's awesome. So, is there anything else though around personalization that makes it like really, really important? I think we talked about keeping people in the game, the consistency concept. We talked about how the cost of generic can come through and either someone doesn't get started or they don't maximize their progress, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I think we also talked about how the specificity of having more acute or tangible or, let's say, more tailored goals also benefits, of course, from personalization. Is there anything else you would add in terms of personalization is important for this reason?
I think they would all the other ones would all kind of still fall under
Hmm.
those umbrellas if I were
Hmm.
to like really think about it. Yeah. How about you?
Can I actually throw one in there that
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just came to mind and I was like, oh yes.
Yeah.
We talk about sustainability, right? And we've talked about this a lot in other episodes. Preamble is just bear with me. We talk about sustainability, but the thing that keeps people going and keeps the process sustainable is often enjoyment. Okay.
Hmm.
And this is where the preferences do matter because I think the personalization of knowing, hey, this is built for me because I like this is also really powerful, right? Like I have a client who we always talk about, let's make things fun. Because if you're struggling to get yourself to the gym and you just don't enjoy it and your plan is filled with things that don't relate to you, it's a barrier to everything else. And I guess this does fall into the consistency thing. But having a plan you enjoy, like what I enjoy in the gym, is very different than what other people enjoy in the gym. Some people
Mhm.
love squatting. If I see squats on my plan, I'm like, damn, I have to squat today.
Yeah.
And I might, you know? So I think it's really important to also like enjoy like what you're doing and personalize that to enjoyment.
Definitely. And that does go into the consistency, as you said. But I think it's also recognizing people try a lot harder when they enjoy things. And even if you think
Absolutely.
about it, the analogy of today is, let's say you hate math, but you loved, I don't know, science or something like that, or you love geography, or I don't know who loves geography. I definitely did.
Justin
But let's
does.
just say, okay, well, way to go, Justin. Um, so let's say you hate math, but you love geography. Guess which homework and projects you're going to try more on? Probably the subject that you like. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other stuff you just kind of delay it, eventually do it, but it's kind of half-ass.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with training. If Courtney sees squats and she's like, I hate squats, knowing her, she's still gonna do them because that's part of her plan. But if you put another quad movement where she's like, yes, this is my favorite quad movement ever, guess which one she's probably gonna progress further with because she's gonna put more effort in. The one she likes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And same goes on the nutrition side of things, right? Like if I'm like, oh, I have to eat, you know, what was our line from before? Baked. I love tilapia and asparagus, by the way. But if you have
Yeah.
to eat that every single day and you're like, I just
7
can't
meals a day.
anymore, right? I don't
Tilapia and
enjoy it
asparagus.
anymore. Then you're like, I'm just gonna go grab that A&W burger because that sounds a lot better right now. So like
Mhm,
adherence becomes a thing, and like that
mhm.
desire to adhere becomes a thing. So I definitely think that 100% we need to think about the benefit of personalization as being
Yeah.
enjoyment too, and
Totally,
therefore
totally. Good
effort.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore adherence. All those things, right?
and
Okay,
therefore
amazing.
consistency.
And therefore consistency. It all comes back to
And therefore
consistency.
progress, yeah.
Yes. And therefore joy.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
and
brought it back to enjoyment.
achievement.
Achievement. That came a
Yeah,
full circle. Okay. Maybe that'll be our next framework is like how enjoyment creates bigger joy. Mhm. Big circle. Okay. When
yeah.
when does personalization matter less? Because we've kind of been teasing this a little bit. And I think the benefits are so clear at this point. I hope they're clear to anyone listening. When might you get away with like not having personalization and still kind of get good enough outcomes or progress or whatever it might be?
If you're just getting started, okay, let's get real. Just getting consistent in the gym and moving your body and somewhat, you know, changing your nutrition in a positive manner. Take that as you may. Something's going to happen, right? If you're going from like literally ground zero to just taking some sort of action. And we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about this before, how people are, you know, most fear of failure when they're first getting started. But that's actually the time where you need to be the least concerned about failing because anything is better than nothing. And
Yeah.
anything you do, theoretically is a step in the right direction. You just need to do something and take some
Mm-hmm.
action. So if you're starting from ground zero, yeah, maybe getting hyper specific doesn't matter as much than just starting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know people talk about this concept of newbie gains and they mean it in terms of like adding muscle because you just never worked out muscle before and there's like a very quick response. But I love that you also talked about how it happens with nutrition too, right? If you make these adjustments, depending on where you're starting from, now all of a sudden, like, okay, like, oh, here's the example protein, right? All of the research on protein is when people are consistently not eating enough protein and then all of a sudden they start eating enough protein, their body composition can change quite a bit, even if body
Hmm.
weight doesn't change, right?
Totally.
And I see that with a lot of women, especially who have maybe a bigger history of not eating enough protein. So you can see like there are quick gains that can be made by, you don't need the perfect meal plan. You just need to, all right, whatever. I just need more protein. And, we're anti meal plan anyways, but you know what I mean? You don't need that perfect
Yeah.
personalized thing. And you also don't need like a 100% specified personalized program because just doing any stimulus on your muscles is going to help you start to
Yeah.
see those initial
Totally.
gains. So
Totally.
absolutely in the beginner stages for sure. It might matter less. I think if we go back to kind of the feedback loop concept, if you start to feel some sort of validation from like, wow, I just did these things and even though they're
Hmm.
generic, like they worked for me,
Something
cool.
happened. Yeah.
Something happened, right? And that does actually then keep you being more consistent.
Hmm.
Now, I know we're here to talk about when you don't need personalization, but I do want to actually build off that. is when you get past that point though, and like we've said, experience is a factor.
Mhm.
I think that you have to level set your expectations that the generic plan that worked for you for a while will likely not work for you forever if you have long-term goals and if you want those goals to keep going and evolving, right?
If you want great results, not just okay, mediocre. And
Yeah.
and even if you can get away with generic at the beginning based on the reasons that we said, why not optimize further and get even better results?
hmm
Because like you could literally compress. And I've seen this time and time again. Even at our last podcast with Eric, he literally said he was training what over a decade before we
Yeah.
started working
Yeah.
together,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we saw more progress in 6 months than he did in 10 years.
That's crazy.
Let that
Yeah.
sink in for a second. So you can stick with your generic chat GBT meal plan and freaking
hmm
training program that you found, or some generic app, or go to your boot camp classes, or follow whatever BS you want to follow, excuse my French. But even if you did see maybe 20% progress, and when you could be seeing like 90% progress, like that's a major gap. So even if it's technically working, why not get even more? It's the same effort, just dialed in more,
Yeah.
that you already might be putting. And I don't know about you, I want to put in the same effort and get more out of it.
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
absolutely. Absolutely. If you're spending an hour in the gym and you're doing whatever versus you're spending an hour in the gym and you're doing something specifically for you, okay. It's the
Yeah,
same initial and
I'm gonna go there anyways.
time investment. Absolutely. But I think you touched on something that leads me into one thing that will help us wrap up this episode. But you talked about how you don't know the progress that you could have had that you have not yet had. And I think that is one of the biggest concepts that holds people back in their fitness
Hmm.
journeys overall. It's like, well, I'm making some progress. Okay, some, but what if, right? And I think you and I keep coming back to just being super curious about your own potential. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
literally is a line. Like I don't have any tattoos, but I'm tempted if that could even be one because I'm so steadfast about it. Just like being curious about your own potential, right? And so if you don't want to settle for good enough progress or okay enough, if you do, that's okay too. Sometimes you just need a little bit of something. But personalization is closing that gap between some and potential.
Totally. And listen, Courtney and I don't have coaches because we're not making any progress. We have
Right.
coaches because we're trying to dial in the progress even more and maximize it. And listen, we have clients even to this day that are very experienced and far along in the fitness journey and have already made and are sitting on fantastic physiques, but then they come to take it to another level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't only need guidance or only need to try to optimize if we're not seeing results. We also need
hmm
to say like, okay, I'm making decent results, but how can I make exceptional results? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like if you think about, okay, so I'm making money off. Let's say I made an investment, and like, okay, I'm getting 2% returns on this investment. Cool. That's something. I'm making money off that investment. Like it's if
Mhm.
it's a stock I bought or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm getting 2%. I'm making money. That's not a bad thing. But then if you tell me, okay, the S&P 500 averages 8% growth a year, you could just put the same amount of money into that and get more returns. I'd be like, yeah. So it's kind of just like seeing the potential of like you can make something or you can make a little bit more. And so, like you said, that's why we have coaches. It wasn't because I made no progress for years, but I made less progress than I could have for years before I hired my coach.
Yeah,
And
totally
I'm
true.
okay admitting that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Good,
personalization.
good combo. Yeah,
Yeah, even if you can make some progress without something personalized, it there's a myriad of benefits to really everything from getting consistent to making sure that you enjoy it, to ultimately helping you unlock the progress that you actually could be making, right? Stay curious about that potential and make sure that you're asking yourself if you're doing anything with your fitness right now, is it personalized to me? Hey, what about my current nutrition or diet strategies is personalized to me? What about my training is personalized to me? Ask yourself those questions to really understand how it's showing up for you or maybe where it might be falling short. And if you want to talk specifically about like a personalization framework for you, the lifestyle, the experience level, the preferences that you have, and you want to bring all those personal things into your fitness journey, you know where to find us. That's what we do. All right. Paris, anything else to add?
I think that sums it up.
All right. So if you haven't already, please do not forget to like, subscribe. And we don't ask for this often, but I am going to ask if you have a review, give us a review. Let us know how you've been enjoying this episode or any other episodes. We would love to hear your feedback. Drop it on whatever platform you're listening on, if that's YouTube in the comments or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Without further ado, we'll be back in your feeds with another episode of Truth Talks. next Monday.